is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with Jason Kutasi, a member of YPO. YPO is the Young Presidents Organization. It's a global leadership community uniting chief executives under the age of 45 across more than 140 countries. Founded in 1950, it provides peer-to-peer learning, networking, and idea exchange to help members grow both professionally and personally. Jason, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So where does this podcast find you today?
In the now warm and sunny Austin area, as opposed to the freezing and snowy Austin of like 2 weeks ago. I think it was at a pipe freeze 2 weeks ago. That was a first.
Wow, that is a rare thing, and it was cold, and glad it's no longer cold. That's not why I came here. So anyway, well, tell us more about what you did before this.
I have done a lot of things. Most recently, I exited a D2C children's book publisher to Scholastic. And so now I'm affectionately known, at least in my world and community, as the kids book guy. And there are, I feel like a million people have ideas for kids books. And so I can't tell you how many pings I get from people I know. It's like, I got this friend, they got this idea for this kids book. Can you talk to them? And most of the time I say yes, because I'm not going back into that world. But most of my chops are in the marketing space, direct to consumer, performance marketing, that kind of thing, which is how what the kids book business grew out of and how we were able to scale it up so fast. So I've been in the marketing game for quite some time. And prior to that, it was, which seems like a lifetime ago, was all hedge funds, private equity, and all those good Excel things. I'm very strong on Excel.
Well, that's great.
From those days.
So you work a lot with scalable startups, and I think that maybe is your core competency. You can grow things fast and take it to the higher level. So tell us more about that. How does it work?
I see a lot of deal flow, and there's a lot of great ideas out there, but not all great ideas are great businesses. And I think that, in sort of the, lean startup ethos and, the MVP stuff, I think one of the most common mistakes I see is, well, it's kind of two and they're related. One is they haven't tested the product before they built it. And I'll give you a great example of something like this. So we have an existing client on the agency side. So post exiting the kids book, I stood up an ad agency again. And so one of the clients had an idea for a new product. And so let's call that product a fruit basket. He wants to sell fruit baskets. But he's like, should I call it the apple fruit basket company or should I call it the banana fruit basket company? And so he really liked apple. And I was like, yeah, but you don't know, right? You're just one guy. And that typical statement of you are not your customer is so true. So I was like, look, we do a lot of business with you. On my dollar, let me just get this stood up and let's run some traffic to it and let's see which one works. Well, turns out the banana won every single day in an A/B split test. Is we're just running Facebook ads to lead gen forums just to see what people are interested in. We're not trying to make money and so on and so forth. And as an extension of that, people don't test their product names. They don't test the brand names. They don't test first product to market, like all of these things, which you can do without building anything. And where we took that from was when we would launch books, we would test the covers before we even, on our internal books, we would test the covers before we even wrote the book or had it illustrated. Because if the cover doesn't click, it's dead. And then on the publishing side, if somebody wanted to have their book published, I'm like, all right, well, we'll take the book. We'll spend a couple $100, and we knew what the over under was going to be on a lead gen on that book. And so I don't have to tell you whether or not I think that book is going to sell. We'll just let the internet tell you whether or not it's going to sell. And if they were below the threshold, so the cost per lead was low enough, you're in. If it's not, you're out. And so really taking that kind of thinking and moving it to startups, I very infrequently see. And then it's kind of pulling on that thread a little bit. Like one of the things I look at first after I get a deck is, hey, I got this new company. Let's go back to the apples. I want to start a fruit stand. And I was like, cool, what does it cost to get somebody to buy a piece of fruit? And they have no clue. Or they haven't tested it, or it's like, oh, I'm just going to put it up on TikTok and it's just going to work. Well, doing this for a living, I promise you it is not that easy. And so that's typically where I dig in and typically where deals fall apart. My perfect scenario is somebody brings me an idea or a business and they're like, it's costing us, $50 to acquire a customer. Here's the average order value. Here's the lifetime value. They could even be underwater because we know we'll be able to optimize and scale that up over time, which reminds me of probably one of the most interesting fundraising situations I've ever been in. It was for a friend of mine who I introduced to a venture capital group. And he walks in with me and he's pitching this idea and so on and so forth. And the guy's a marketer also. And the guys are like, so how are you going to get customers? And he's like, what do you mean? They're like, so you're going to do like SEO, or you're going to run like search, like magazine ads, like whatever it is. This is probably, gosh, how many years ago? It's probably 15 years ago, a little bit more now, probably closer to 20. And he looks at them with this like dumbfounded look on his face and he goes, I'm going to pay for them. And they're like, what do you mean you're going to pay for them? And he's like, this is what I do. Like we've already acquired, I forget the number, but it's like he'd already acquired, I think it was 25,000 customers below target and he was profitable day one. I had never seen this. And they go, will you take a check from us today? And I was like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, we want in on this company. And it's all because he knew how to make money. Like that's literally what it is. And I think that, if you can get people to walk into your store and buy your product, people will throw money at you. And yeah, and so that's just how I look at it. It's like, do you know how to get customers to buy your product?
Well, that's great. So what else do you do for scalable startups? It seemed like there's lots of help they need in different ways. What do you find yourself doing most?
Generally for me, it's typically starts on the marketing side. And I think the other piece of it is when people look at selling their product, they often don't understand the why or the pain point or the actual need for that product. Right. And so I was talking to a guy earlier today, and he's in the children's space. And he said that one of the ideas he had was around, or one of the pain points after surveying the customers was the parents are looking for a better way to help their children go to sleep. And in thinking through this and talking to him about it, it actually wasn't helping their children go to sleep. Like, what is the problem they're actually trying to solve? Maybe it's a temper tantrum before they go to sleep. Maybe it's because tomorrow morning they're going to sleep through their alarm clock and they're going to be disaster and miss the school bus. Right. And so when people think about marketing, they typically think at a higher level rather than the acute thing that is specific to that customer. And I think it's a big miss all the time. A great example of that is, I want to lose weight. And they're like, okay, we're going to help people lose weight. But that's not really why they want to lose weight. They want to lose weight because their blood panel came back all messed up, or they're pre-diabetic, or they're about to go to Hawaii and take family photos and they want to look thinner, or it's about to be their daughter's wedding, right? Like, what is that acute pain point of that avatar for your ideal customer? And when you think through that, there was a really interesting presentation I saw at this YPO thing. And the guy asked this room of people, all whom have successful businesses, right? And he goes, I want you guys to describe your ideal customer that you can sell 100% of the time. Dude, the room just like broke, because even I was sitting there when we had the kids book business at the time. I was thinking through, I was like, well, who is that customer? Right. And so it's like, all right, is it a grandma who has these grandkids that have these specific problems of this specific income, that lives in a specific area, that likes these things and dislikes these other things? And I think that a lot of companies don't think through that. They just think they're I'm going to sell hot sauce and it's hot sauce for everybody. No, it's not. Right? It can be, but like there are those specific people that just resonate with your brand.
Well, it sounds like you've dealt with a lot of scalable startups for many years. What kind of trend are we seeing in that space today? How is it changing or staying the same over the last 15, 20 years you've been doing this?
I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing now is there is a quicker pace to not even necessarily profitability, but like closer to profitability or more cash flow. I think the D2C channel in consumer products is also become a much greater component of like it's a much stronger sales channel. And I think that the people who understand that they can get to market faster, right? So you don't need as much capital to test and prove these things. And so I see a lot of that. I see a lot less brand plays than I used to. And which makes perfect sense, right? So like does brand work? For sure. But you need a lot of money and a lot of time, right? And so I see these deals coming out where they can just test faster and they can iterate faster and they can get to product market fit faster. And they can test with the messaging before they actually build the product or like add this additional feature. Like, do people even care about this thing?
So, what do you think is the biggest challenge these scalable startups face today?
I think there's a couple. I think one of them, gosh, I sound like everything I talk about is marketing. But I think one of them is they don't actually understand marketing, which will be one of your largest channels. And it doesn't have to be all of them, but like, are you good at Amazon? Are you good at email? Are you good at Facebook? Are you a TikTok guy? I think that's one thing. They don't view that. They talk about it, but they don't view it as a necessary skill to grow a business the way that you would a skill like understanding a P&L and a balance sheet, right? So like I can't start a business unless I know how to read a balance sheet, right? And a P&L. But like, can I start a business, particularly on the consumer, well, specifically on the consumer side? It's also true in the B2B play, but like, do you know how to play in the digital landscape? And I just think it's a massively required skill.
What do you think about the tech platforms? They used to be low cost and everybody used it, Google search, Facebook, Twitter, etc. But it seems like they've gotten expensive over time. What's your take on them today? How effective are they, or cost effective, I should say?
So we talk about this all the time. And so there are all these jokes in the marketing world. It's like, oh, remember how good and cheap 2015 was? Remember how good and cheap 2018 was? I was just at a marketing conference and I met a bunch of guys that got into the space kind of like 2020, 2021. They're like, oh, remember how good 2020 was? I'm like, by the way, in 5 years from now, we're going to be like, do you guys remember how good 2025 is? So the short answer is they're highly effective if you know how to use them. A car is a piece of shit if you don't know how to drive, right? And so that dovetails into this like AI ethos. Like you hear all the time, AI is going to take over like a bunch of copywriter positions, let's say, right? But like not really. It's a tool that you have to, that a really good copywriter can use to be even better or iterate faster or come up with more ideas. And so even in the startup landscape, use AI to make an image of an apple and an image of a banana and see if that is a viable sort of thing. So I think costs are going to keep going up. Competition is going to keep going up. I also think, to previous questions, some challenges that companies face. It is way easier than ever before to rip somebody else's idea. It is so easy. You can rip their product, their funnel, their marketing strategy, their ads, like the whole thing, right? And we see it a lot. And so like somebody gets a little bit of traction and there's five copycats right behind them, right? And so that's where I think brand becomes important, by the way. That becomes the defensibility. Everything you buy at Target, you can buy someplace else. But like, why do you go to Target? You're like, oh, I trust the brand. Or I don't know, like Aloe or Lululemon, like own this channel, right? And my wife may correct me, but this is how I think about it. Like Lululemon owned this black leggings thing. And now there's this other company, Aloe, and then, by the way, there's a shit ton, probably lesser quality, you can buy on Amazon for $500 to $500, wherever your price point is. And so I think it's much, much harder to build a moat around your business, particularly unless you're like, I own a steel foundry, and like that's a lot harder to just stand up overnight.
Cool. Well, COVID and the pandemic came along and upended a lot of startups and a lot of the standards that we had, and now we're into remote work and other things. What was the impact of COVID on scalable startups that you see?
Well, first of all, if you were selling kids' books during COVID, you were having a real good time. So, in kind of a backhanded way, I was like, I kind of wish COVID would come back again. But I'm out of that business, so I guess not. So, a couple things with COVID. So, like, one, I think it changed a lot of human behaviors in general. And I'll get back to the office piece. But the one that always jumps to mind is my dad hits me up and he goes, "Have you ever used DoorDash?" I was like, "Yeah, we use it like almost every day to order lunch to the office. And my wife and I use it like 3 times a week. Yes, I know DoorDash." She's like, "Well, your mom and I went on DoorDash and we ordered a pizza off of it. And it was great. And like we put the thing in and the pizza just showed up at our house." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's really good." And fast forward, I was like, do you guys still using DoorDash?" And he's like, "No, my father's retired. And so like my parents are very inefficient because they have time. They're like, no, we just like to get in the car. We'll drive to the pizza place and pick it up." They're not even using the Domino delivery guy, right? So I think it opened up people to a lot of new behaviors and processes that they wouldn't have otherwise. So I'm an investor in a telemedicine startup, a platform like Shopify for telemedicine, basically. And telemedicine, I feel like compound pharmacies and telemedicine have been around for a while, but like all of a sudden you got sick, you couldn't go to the doctor. Urgent care all of a sudden was just do it on your phone. So it effectively changed that behavior. And then when you take a look specifically to the workplace, gosh, I have so many stories about this. I think the biggest impact for us, and my current business is entirely remote, is we don't have the water cooler talk amongst the team members. And then we also don't have the executive brainstorming in the evening, right? So like everybody kind of like, you know, empties out of the office about 6, and usually you're left with kind of the executive leadership team typically. And then I can't walk into Johnny's office and be like, "Hey, dude, I have this crazy idea today," and just start talking about it and pull a marker out and start drawing on a whiteboard to really workshop ideas at the same cadence. Now I got to hit a chat and I'm like, "Are you available for a Zoom?" No whiteboard, by the way. And like, drawing on Zoom is trash. So it's like you're missing kind of that interaction for brainstorming, particularly for stuff that iterates really, really quickly. I also think that a lot of people, particularly on the employee side, and this might be controversial, I don't know, but they want to be remote, right? And it's like, why do you want to be remote? It's like, well, I want to walk the dog. I don't want to have to commute, like all of these different things. But we had a guy we were going to hire, and we go through the whole interview process. And at the very end, he goes, "So this is a remote job, right?" And I'm like, "No." At the top of the job post, I put like 3 asterisks on either side. It was like in office only. Like I was like very clear about it because we were getting all these people that thought this job is remote. And I was like, I was living in San Diego at the time. And so I was like, "Where do you live in San Diego?" And he tells me, and I go, "You are one exit." By the way, our office was exit the freeway, drive 10 seconds, right? We were an office on the freeway, right? Office building on the freeway. And I was like, "You're one exit away. You could ride your bike to the office. Like, why do you not want to come in?" He was like, "Well, it's just, I got to get my car and then like the traffic and it's just this waste of time." I'm like, 30 minutes, like wasted time. I grew up in LA. Like, you want to talk about traffic? Hour and 20 minutes to get home, and it was 8 miles. So, and then I think that an individual like that, I told him, I said, "Look, I'm not going to hire you if you don't want to come into the office, because at your rate, I can go get somebody in Kansas for 60% of that rate who also isn't coming into the office. Shit, I can get somebody in Central or South America or Eastern Europe or whatever at half your, like a fraction of your price that can deliver the same work." So if you don't want to be in the office, you're not losing to somebody else in San Diego. Frankly, you might not be losing to somebody else in the US, right? And so if you don't value that, you're going to have to readjust your pricing expectations.
Wow. Well, so there's also the impact of technology on scalable startups like
Yeah.
AI. How do you see that changing the game?
Man, we use, and maybe it's because we're in digital marketing now with the new business on the agency side, but we use it nonstop, like nonstop. And I think there's simple things for ideation, right? And so you ask it questions and it comes up with things that you don't think of. We had went through the YPO thing. We had an AI consultant come and speak to the chapter and walk through a bunch of these different things. And one of the case studies that he did was he took a board meeting presentation for a client he has, and then he built an avatar off of each one of those board members, uploaded the deck and asked it, this is a short version, how would you respond as each one of these people? And then adjusted the deck to address all of their concerns. He also told us a story of a company that I think they were raising a Series C or something like that. And they were going to go raise, and they were asking about basically the partners and the executive committee or whatever that would review the deal about like each one of these guys. And I'm going to mess up this story. I can't remember exactly what it was, but one of the guys was super into this philanthropic thing. I can't remember. Let's call it Feed the Children, right? So he's like, he added something that was like, I'm making a promise that if our company achieves a certain EBITDA or revenue goal, as a brand, we are going to donate to Feed the Children a certain amount of money. And it's like all of these like little things to uncover. The workflow and the bots in the process are fantastic, and they just get better and better and better. And the craziest part is it wasn't a part of our workflow 36 or even really 24 months ago, right? It like the adoption and the way it has changed things is absolutely insane. And it moves so fast.
Right. And then there are investors in scalable startups. What do you see for them going forward?
I think a lot of the investors in these startups are looking for moats around a business, and they're looking for stuff that makes money. Right. And so if, I have my apple cart business or my fruit stand, and I go, Hall, like, do you want to invest in my fruit stand? And you're like, cool. But like the guy next block over is going to stand up another fruit stand. And by the way, are you making money? You're like, yeah, I'm making so much money. I sell these apples for $1. I'm making $1,000 a day. And you're just like, but it costs you $2 to get somebody to buy $1 apple. So I think there's been a correction. This is not an original thought, right? But it's just sort of like as the cost of capital has gone up, right? And there were a lot of big bets made that were true Hail Mary passes, or just like, I don't know, we're going to take a shot and see what happens. I think some people took in the shorts a little bit. And so now they're being more conservative and strategic, and not necessarily on the VC side looking, moving to a PE structure, but I think they're definitely pulling a few pages out of that playbook. And then I know a bunch of guys in the PE space that took some gambles on stuff that were high flyers that just, when we hit this new norm, they're just not flying so high anymore.
So, what's your advice for people investing in scalable startups? What do you tell them to do before they write that check?
I think the first thing is to understand the business. It sounds so basic, right? But like, what is your competitive advantage? I just read a book on decision making, and what's Warren Buffett's partner's name? Charlie Munger.
Yeah.
The author of this book talked about Charlie Munger quite a bit, and one of Buffett and Munger have so many great ideas, but like one of them was invest in shit that you know. If you don't know about it, then go learn about it and then become an expert and then go deep into that channel, right? Because otherwise it's just kind of spray and pray shotgun approach. And that's why like a lot of what I do is focused on investing in companies that are D2C or B2B, use digital marketing, because I can see the upside or the potential risks probably a lot faster than the competitive set. I've looked at deals where I've lost by guys just paying a stupid amount of money because, in my opinion anyway, they don't understand the business, and vice versa, right? Where I was like, oh, this is going to be hot. I know something else that most people don't. I'm going in, or I'm going in double, right? Because I just see it and I'm willing to take a flyer on it. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of stick to your knitting, right? Like,
Makes
what's the
sense.
thing you're good at?
Absolutely. Makes sense. Stick to what you know. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I think one of the other things around, I just think of the deals that come through. I think that people who pitch and bring ideas to investors, I think one, they need to know more about the investor. It's like it's super obvious. Like, know who you're pitching to, right? You can use AI to find out a lot about me, right? And so start with some kind of, some kind of connection. I think another thing is, don't be afraid to get on a plane. I was just back from a conference in Vegas, and my whole team got sick. Like, half the people at this conference got sick, like knocked out. And I told my wife, I was like, I'm not going to this conference next year. Like, every time I go to Vegas for a conference, I get sick. And by the way, I wasn't partying. It's just you're shaking a lot of hands, close spaces, whatever, right? And so I told the team that we're probably not going next year either. And they're like, really? But like, what about like these clients? We got these big clients. I'm like, get on a plane. If they're that big a client, go down. And instead of these really short hour meetings, fly to where they live, go get lunch, go get some dinner and drinks, learn about their families. And then you're going to have a longer period of time to actually build a relationship and discuss the opportunity. People do business with people they like, right? And you can't get to know that person very well on a Zoom. Buy them a drink, spend some time, get to know them, and the chances of you getting a deal done with that person goes through the freaking roof.
Well, that's great advice. So how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
LinkedIn is usually the best way. Yeah, you can email me too, but email is like, I get too many emails. Like, I can't get to I can't wait until I get to the place where I don't have to do email anymore. There's a big guy in our space. Maybe I'll leave you with this last little tidbit. There's a very well-known D2C brand in the space, huge bowling. And I get an intro to him because they want to come up with a kids book line. And I was like, great. Well, like, what's your email? And then like, this is over text. The intro was text. And I was like, let me loop together an email and we'll set up a Calendly and a Zoom and the whole thing. He's like, I don't do email. I was like, what do you mean you don't do email? This is a 9-figure a year company. He's like, I don't do email. He's like, I have a VA that does email. Anybody that needs to get a hold of me, they have my cell phone number and they can text me. I don't check email ever. And I was like, that is my dream. So anyway, you can email me, but if I don't respond to you, don't feel bad.
They're not the only one. Understood. That's great. Well, I appreciate the interview today. I'll put your contact details in the show note and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.